Welcome, everyone. It is Rock Talk with the Doc Rocker. Homework assignments. I am Jeff Bonomo, joined with the Doc Rocker, and every week we give each other an album to listen to, and then the next week we spit it back out at each other in the Zoomiverse. So this week was a little different. I got Mario Kart 8 original soundtrack to listen to. There's first of all, there's 66 tracks, okay?
Yeah, but some of them are 10 seconds. So.
I know. But, and I
didn't listen to all the stuff at the end of it, like the superstar and the finish line jingle and all that kind of.
I heard all that.
Yeah.
So what did I give you?
So this was another different, interesting one for me too. I got Bruce Dickinson's The Chemical Wedding, and it's interesting because I had already listened to this album several times in the past, but we've never done an actual review on it. So we decided to throw that in so we can give it the fair share of spotlight it deserves. Yeah, lots of good listening going all around.
I think we were celebrating, I think, the 23rd anniversary of its release or something.
So somebody posted it on the Facebook group, and I think that's what made either you think of it or me think of it, and it's like, did we ever talk about that? And we said no, so it's like, all right, let's do it as homework. So here we are.
Yeah, we'll talk about briefly, but I'll talk about Mario Kart first, though.
Okay. I'm really curious to see what you thought of it.
Okay, first of all, something must be said about composers or composers of video games, or like the amount of music that they have to come up with for a video game is usually a hell of a lot more than any other form of entertainment, pretty much. Maybe no, still no. I was thinking movies, but no. Most of the time, you got to come up with hours and hours and hours of music that has to play on a certain theme, usually. So why I'm saying that is because they should get way more credit outside of the video game world than they do, and they don't. I couldn't name you one video game composer. I was trying to think of the guy that composed for Fallout. I don't even remember his name. Mark something, but no. See,
I don't know the Fallout music that well. One of my students is working on the Fallout 4 theme, but I forget who the composer is. It's not any of the guys that do the Elder Scrolls games. It's a different.
I'm sorry, I'm wrong. It's not. It isn't Mark something other. I think the guy's name is Ian or something. Doesn't really matter. Well, again, proving my point that outside of people who love video games and they're into that whole thing, no one knows who these people are, and that's a shame. That is a complete shame.
I'm glad you agree.
Okay, this whole original soundtrack. He had like slap bass, he had wailing electric guitar, he had strings, he had big brass. There's elements of jazz, there's blues, there's big band found throughout, and there's even some metal, like the Bowser's Castle.
I was looking forward to hearing what you thought of that. I was hoping that would have defied your expectations of what Mario Kart music is going to sound like.
No, I knew it was going to be kind of like that. Because I've played Mario Kart. I haven't played Mario Kart 8. I didn't know there was that many of them, but I played the original.
Yeah, they made a bunch.
It gives me like Mannheim Steamroller vibes. Like, and I'm not even talking about the Christmas music. Mannheim Steamroller does other stuff besides Christmas music, and if you've never heard,
I actually didn't know.
You should check it out. The Fresh Air series 1 through 8, I believe. Mannheim Steamroller, Chip Davis. I love the guy. I love that stuff, and that's what a lot of the more synth laden tracks, they gave me like serious Mannheim Steamroller vibes, which I like.
I'm glad. I had no idea that was a thing.
Yeah, I dig Mannheim Steamroller. I always did. I don't really the Christmas things. Not as
That's
much.
Always how I felt about them. The Christmas stuff, I'm like,
the other stuff that the Steamroller does, man, it's better, and that's what it reminds me of. Mario Kart 8. Long way from 8-bit tunes of the 80s, we'll say that. I enjoyed it. It's fun. It's something you turn on when you're doing work,
Yeah, same. I've been on a bit of a Mario Kart kick the last couple of weeks.
Well, there's also, a whole subgenre underground thing of, orchestras performing these things in concert, which I think is really cool. And I know you've seen some of them. You've seen some of these live performances.
I've seen a bunch of them, yeah.
Yeah, which is great. And I really wish more people would appreciate what is done in video games, especially now, because I love playing video games too. The weird thing is, me and you play different types of video games.
Yeah.
Which is odd, because I want long, drawn out, complicated narratives and stuff, and you're like, I just want to shut my brain off and drive my Mario Kart.
Yeah.
Which
just do the same 3 laps around the same track 100 times just to like tune out, and But I like the short paced moment to moment stuff.
But no the music, the music itself, it's great stuff. It really is, especially when now it's pulled out of its element, and you're just listening to that. You're not playing the game and hearing it in the background. You're just concentrating on that music, so you're hearing more of it. And you can really appreciate it more that way. So anyone who's a fan of Mario or Mario Kart or anything like that, check out the original soundtracks of any of these games. And I'll go back to Fallout again. Check out the Fallout soundtrack. Check out the Fallout 3. Check out the New Vegas soundtrack. Check out Skyrim. Check out all that stuff that, these composers spent hundreds of hours of coming up with, hundreds of hours of music, basically. Well, maybe not hundreds of hours, but a lot. We'll say a lot.
And I will say, Mario Kart music compilations you can find on YouTube that are like 5 or 6 hours long, just across the 8 games. And there's like, even back from the original on the Super Nintendo, there's a lot of like really nice, sophisticated part writing, 4-part harmonies, jazz voicings, all this like really, the stuff that like the music theory geek in me is like, oh, that I can hear that sharp 9 on that thing, and that sounds really cool. It's one of those things, as a kid, I grew up just like liking how it sounded and trying to pick it all up by ear, because back when I was a kid, you couldn't just find a YouTube video that shows you how to play everything. I had to sit there and figure it out by ear and listen to a lot of this stuff. So it was a lot of that kind of obsessive listening, and I've never kind of grown out of that, even now, like with having like my strong music education background that I have now, kind of going and listening to the tracks as a sophisticated adult. It's like I could appreciate even more, like, oh yeah, there's all these cool little things here that are like so well developed for music that's just gonna be for a kid's toy, essentially. And like the amount of just TLC and ingenuity and passion that goes into writing some of these soundtracks. And I love, especially as a video game music fanboy, hearing now, like, having it comes to the point where there's studio grade musicians working on these tracks, and it's all live recorded stuff now. Like you just look up the Mario Kart 8 music and you'll find so many like music geek pages like breaking apart that saxophone solo in Dolphin Shoals. Like, music geeks can't shut up about that song, and you hear one lap of it and you can hear why. It's incredible. I'm personally very fond of the Bowser's Castle music. I just put that on loop sometimes when I'm doing work, just hearing that nice chugging riff, and then all of a sudden the brass instruments come in, and then there's this crazy shredding guitar solo, and then you can just toggle to like a different track, like GBA Mario Circuit, and like here's this whole like happy-go-lucky fusion thing. But even that's really good. It's got this real funky bass line underneath it, and it's got all these really cool. I love the music. I really, really think that the soundtrack, especially for 8, is some of the absolute best video game music ever composed to date. It's really, really an incredible, strong soundtrack. And it's a shame because everyone's like, oh, Mario Kart's just this goofy little thing, a little party game for 8-year-olds. And it's definitely a lot more than that. And the music.
Well, it has a following, and it has like fans and stuff. So it's not just for kids. And the music itself, it has to be good. If you're going to listen to that, you don't want it to detract from what you're doing, from what you're playing.
Yes,
so it has
exactly.
to be catchy. You don't want people to be like, oh my God, this music is effing annoying, because I have to do this level over and over again until I beat it or whatever.
Right,
so it has to be good. And that's probably why it is so good.
I think that's exactly the design philosophy that goes into the composition of the tracks. Like, these kids are going to hear this 100,000 times. We got to make it interesting and different and fun, that you can listen to it on a loop and not get tired of it.
Because I can remember back, playing video games. I'm not even going to go back to, being a kid. I'll go back to being a teenager. I'm going back to like the late 80s when they started creating more complex music inside video games in the late 80s. It wasn't like it is now. It was still, synthesized, probably 16-bit or 32-bit. But some of that music was annoying. And it was like it started to grate on you.
But
some of it was really catchy.
Yeah, you turn the sound off, and that's the
Yeah,
last thing you want to do for your game.
yeah.
You know.
It's amazing how far it's come since then. You know, back when I started playing games in 1977, 78, my Atari, like those programmers had to figure out how to make sounds, like they probably had like, okay, we can make this tone or this tone. And maybe that tone, if we don't do this, there was a lot of,
a lot of sacrifices.
Yeah, a lot of sacrifices. If you read up on them, they had to sacrifice, but over and over again, like they just made leaps. And every time there was a new system, there was also a new jump in sound technology, especially with in the 80s, the Commodore 64 computer came out, and that had a sound chip in it that was amazing compared to what else was out there at the time. Even the IBM computers couldn't keep up with the sound chip that was inside the Commodore 64, which then, of course, went to Nintendo, went to this, went to that, and they just would build off that technology. And now, like you said, it's all digital. It's real musicians coming in and doing real performances. And again, I will stress the amount of music here varied, well put together, and they should get way more credit than they do outside of the video game industry. I don't know. Do they give awards other than the video game awards? Do like
Not that I know of. I think that's it.
It's like I know MTV's not going to do it. I mean, or like do the Grammys give awards?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think it's just the yearly video game awards.
Yeah, it's just that,
and even that's a pretty small thing where not a lot of people watch it.
Yeah, well, enough people, I guess, to continue doing. I mean, there's a big section of people who still play video games and watch that stuff, but of course, it's not in the mainstream. So the mainstream will never tell you that there's a big crowd of people watching it.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever, but it was cool. It was cool. I liked it. Thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome very much.
Yeah, okay. What do you think about The Chemical Wedding, the fifth solo album by Bruce Dickinson, released in 1998?
The Chemical Wedding is an absolute masterpiece. There's not a track on this record that I don't like. It's kind of funny. Like, if you explain what it is, especially to like a big Maiden head, it's like, oh, here's the stuff that Bruce Dickinson did in the 90s. He went off and did his solo project after he left Maiden, and he's got all these cool albums out, and they're like really cool or whatever. And, this one's got Iron Maiden guitarist Adrian Smith on it. So like on paper, you would think that like this is like store brand Iron Maiden, like Iron Maiden Light or like Diet Iron Maiden. So it's like it's some of the guys in the band, but it's not Steve Harris and it's not the full band, and it's not going to be like anywhere near as incredible. And it's funny enough, like listening to Maiden in the 90s, that was a lot of fans agree the absolute lowest period in their output. So it's kind of like it's almost like we live in this like weird parallel universe in the 90s, where like all of the stuff that was not Iron Maiden was like totally musically what Iron Maiden should be. Like this sound that they have cultivated, and I think it really hits its peak in this album. I forget what the other album was that I listened to as well when I first, when you first introduced this stuff to me that he did.
1997, Accident of Birth.
Yeah. And that was another like total just knockout banger, really cool track after track, amazing writing.
That was the first one he did with Adrian. Yeah, that's the first one he did with Adrian. And this one, to me, I think just takes what they did with Accident of Birth and brings it to another level.
Yes,
to me, another level up in heaviness.
Yes,
especially.
It's especially heavy. It's extremely heavy, and I like that about it. There's a lot of lower tuning, which I always like as a guitar player. I like all the really low sludgy stuff. But like the songs are varied and interesting. You have some fast stuff. You have really slow, heavy stuff. You have some songs that are a little longer, but they don't feel long because they're, and they're not really progressive, but the songs have lots of distinct musically interesting parts. But it's essentially just a really well-developed structure of, verse, chorus. Here's a bridge, which is going to be marked with a lot of stylistic contrast. And then we're going to have some kind of return to form. Good example of that, I want to say, looking at the track list now, it's been a couple days since I listened to it, but looking at like the end, the Alchemist, you know,
The
it's like an
Alchemist.
8-minute track, but it's structurally pretty straightforward. I wouldn't go so far as to call it progressive because it's definitely
Right.
not, but it's
No.
solid. It's absolutely solid. The title track is awesome. The opening track is awesome. I think my favorite track that I keep going back to, like after I finished, so I did about half of the album, and then I like ran out of time, so I went back and re-listened to the Book of Thel, which is easily my favorite track on the album. And then, I skipped ahead, listened to the remainder of the album, and then went back to the Book of Hell again. And then rinse repeated the next day. Where like, let's re-listen to the end again just to make sure I really take it all in, and then go back to the Book of Thel. And like, it got to a point where I was just like, I just kept hitting repeat on Book of Thel. That song is like one of my favorite songs like of all time. It's just fantastic. It's super super heavy. The every single brick in this whole thing is just perfect. The drumming, the grooves are real heavy and they're varied and they're interesting. The drummer's doing a lot more than just keeping the beat. The fills are very tasteful. The guitar playing especially it's super heavy. The soloing is really, really melodic. The riffs are really, really heavy. Every single riff is unique and distinct, and it punches you in the face. Every single song just makes you make that distinct metal face. That the nose comes up and the eyebrows come down, and you get that real stink face of like, oh, that sounds awesome. And then Bruce comes in. This is some of Bruce's best singing, absolute best singing. He does not have any moments of weakness on this album, I think. And I hate to just kind of just gush the entire time, but it's really just, it's musical perfection. There's nothing wrong. And it's funny enough, when I listened to this, I had other stuff queued on my Spotify. So when I listened to it, I went on and found a YouTube playlist. So I was just going through on autoplay a series of YouTube videos that was just the album that somebody put together. And sure enough, I would, glance at the screen every once in a while listening to it. And sure enough, like the first comment from any random person on any one of these tracks is, Chemical Wedding is like the best metal album ever. Chemical Wedding is just a super great album. Chemical Wedding is just this underrated. It's just this masterpiece. It's just some of the best in metal history. And that's what every comment was saying stuff like. And it's like, yeah, I can see that. It's incredible how good it is. Apparently there is like a whole set like kind of theme throughout the whole thing, and it's based on I was just looking up a little bit of like the wiki stuff, and it's got to be really, really interesting if I'm actually going in and looking stuff up, because I normally don't even get involved in that kind of stuff. I just take the music at the surface level and try to pick apart all the what's going on with the bass, what's going on with the guitars, what's going on with the singing, what's going on with like chords and keys and time signatures and all the basic nuts and bolts. That's the kind of stuff I really fixate on. So the fact that I'm sitting here even just looking up the basic wiki page of like, okay, it has this, it draws inspirations from literary works of William Blake, and apparently some of the quotes from his work comes in some of the lyrics. There's all sorts of references to the Bible and like all this like really cool. I'm sure it's like even more sublime and meaningful and powerful and potent than I'm even giving it credit for, because I don't, of course, as a guy who's not like into the lyrics, I don't know what it's about at all. But I don't care. I can listen to it 1,000 times and I will love it every time I listen to it, and I'll have no idea what I'm listening to, really, which I know is probably a shame, but that's just me. I care about the music first and foremost, nothing else. But yeah, it's awesome.
When you read into the lyrics a little bit, there's a lot of symbolism in there, because the poet William Blake, he was a little out there also.
Okay.
And there's a lot about alchemy, and there's a lot about like astrology and stuff. A lot of, like I said, symbolism throughout the whole thing. There's spoken excerpts of William Blake, and the cover art is actually a William Blake painting called "The Ghost of a Flea," which is weird in itself. This is what I liked about it, because I went back. I've been listening to it all week.
Nice.
I loved this album when it came out, and like I even said like back when it came out, this is what Iron Man should be doing.
Yeah, it's really the better of the two at that stage in time.
The first thing I got to mention, I can't forget this. I didn't write it down, but I do remember the thing. I always thought this: the song "The Tower" on this album is the best Iron Maiden song that wasn't written by Iron Maiden.
Yeah, that chorus is straight out of Iron Maiden.
Yeah. and
It's
that
awesome.
had harmony lead they play with the guitars and stuff. Just like it just feels like an Iron Maiden song.
Yeah, a
So
lot of this
much
album,
more.
it feels like if Iron Maiden like really went in like in that much darker, heavier direction, it's kind of like
Yeah.
this is what I want Iron Maiden to be. And the stuff that I like in the post 2000s Maiden, where Bruce and Adrian both go back, is
Yeah.
the stuff that sounds more like this, you know, like things off of
Sure.
the new album, like the Parchment and Hell on
Sure.
Earth,
Yeah.
like all the
Yeah.
really kind of heavy stuff. Like that's when they're their best. And this whole album is just that. It's just all of my favorite bits of Maiden, probably my favorite literal bits of Maiden. I love Bruce. He's one of my favorite singers. Adrian's easily, I've gone on record before and said he's my favorite guitar player in the band. So the fact that they're still working together at this time period in history, and I knew nothing about it until recently, it's just like there's this awesome like whole like secret catalog, and I'm now in on the secret, and I feel so blessed to be in on the secret, because this is an album I will go back to just as much as I go back to Rust in Peace, just as much as I go back to Concepts of Math, you know, that real wacky progressive one we listened to a couple weeks ago. Like there's just these albums that over our listening assignments and over these adventures we've had over the past year, there's just stuff that has like really popped out and grabbed me. It's like, this is a new favorite. I'm going to go back to this over and over again. I'm never going to get tired of it.
Out of all of Bruce's solo albums, the only two I go back to, Accident of Birth and this one. The other ones, even the one he did after he rejoined Maiden, Tyranny of Souls, it's okay, but it just lacks what Chemical Wedding is. It lacks what Accident of Birth is. And the ones before Accident of Birth, like Tattooed Millionaire, that's a rock album. I know you listened to that and you said it was Balls to Picasso, I didn't like that much at all. Skunk Works, I thought was terrible. Unfortunately, sorry, Bruce, it was terrible. But then when he got back with Adrian Smith, like Accident of Birth was like, all right, you're onto something. And then Chemical Wedding, to me, is like, wow, there's a heavier guitar tone, first of all, which makes his vocals sound more powerful, I think, because it's down-tuned, you know. There's this down-tuning there that allows him
a stronger contrast with his higher voice, too.
Right, more powerful without stretching like he does now with Maiden. The lyrics are interesting. They're very interesting lyrics. You know, even I don't even know what some of them mean. They just sound cool. The melodic flourishes keep the album like really interesting, because it's at some points it's really, really crushingly heavy. And there's a little stab at Iron Maiden in this album. The song Machine Men, the lyrics read, Machine Men, cannibals of rust, Machine Men, the iron bites to dust.
Yeah, I remember that being a particularly powerful line. Like, I don't even...
little jab at what Maiden was doing.
Yeah, I never even would have read into it that way. But this is one of those, like, it just sounds so cool. It's just such a well-written line. The rhyming is really cool. The way he delivers it, every chorus is really, really cool. There's even a little bit of varying flair in some of the repeats of it that he does. It's just awesome.
Now the Alchemist.
I literally can't find a flaw in the album. I can't. I think it's perfect.
You mentioned the Alchemist, which closes the album. Well, I love the first part of that song. Like, he's just screaming, and it's, you know, the lyric, you know, bring me madman's bodies, I'll break them like bread. You know, it's just like that's metal right there. Then it switches. Very metal. Then it switches at the end to like a revised Chemical Wedding. You know, they play it a little bit different, I think, you know, to end the album out, but they go back to that whole Chemical Wedding song from, I think, track 2, you know, to end it, you know, which is like, that's a really neat cap on the album. It's great.
Perfect time.
Now, I remember reading an interview when this first came out that Adrian Smith claims for, I think it's the song Trumpets of Jericho, he tuned his guitar down and put bass strings on it. And that's how he plays the intro. And I'm like, that's metal right there. Yeah. And if you think about that intro, it's real heavy. It just sounds like heavy. I don't know how else to explain it, but it's like
the perfect musical definition. Like, if someone asks you what heavy is, like, listen to this. Listen to this whole album. This is what people refer to when they talk about heavy.
Yeah, some of the heavier parts, Adrian Smith played guitar with bass strings. He threw bass strings on it, tuned it down, and I guess gave it even a heavier feel to it, which is crazy.
Now, there's love it even more.
Here's another thing that's going to blow your mind that I don't think you know about. There's a film with the screenplay written by Bruce Dickinson called The Chemical Wedding. He made
That
a movie.
I saw on the wiki when I looked it up, but apparently it's got nothing to do with the album, right? It's not
No,
like
no,
anything
it's
connected.
about the reincarnation of Aleister Crowley, but the movie, I didn't see the whole thing. I saw clips of it online. I still haven't gotten around to watching it. You know, me, the guy who's just been in the last podcast we were talking about, I was bitching about movies for about 20 minutes, and I haven't seen this one. I heard it's kind of goofy, you know, that British kind of Bruce Dickinson goofy humor. But I do want to see it. I just haven't seen it yet. But that's the album, and that's all I gotta say about that album. I absolutely love it. And anyone that loves metal, that loves Maiden, and has
you need to listen to this. It's essential. You're severely missing out if you pass this up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great. So that's the homework for this week.
Yeah, hope you enjoyed us talking about it. Go listen to this stuff, especially if you don't know what it is. You know, go listen to some crazy good video game music. Go listen to some crazy good metal, and you know, I'm gonna give as far as video game music is concerned, I'm gonna give Mario Kart 8.5 because it was good stuff. It was really, really good stuff. The way I could grade my video game music is the soundtrack for Fallout New Vegas is a 10 with me. So this is an 8.5. That's great that it's that comparable to it. That makes me very happy.
It's good. It's excellent stuff. And The Chemical Wedding, as far as metal albums go, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10.
I'm going to give it an 11 out of 10.
Wow.
It's really like, it's just beyond perfect for me. It's what a perfect album. Every single track is dynamite.
I agree. I mean, it's not a bad, I can't give it a 10. I'm not sure why.
Oh, that's fine. You don't have to.
I'm
a little more generous with my grading.
Close it out. Tell them what they need to do now, the people that are watching.
Well, for starters, go listen to all this stuff that we were just talking about for the last little bit. And then if you like us talking about it, give us a like on the YouTube video, subscribe to our channel because we try to post listening reviews pretty much every week. So we're always showing each other some new content, and we're doing fun little bits like this where we talk about music we haven't heard before and digging a little deeper into it sometimes. So subscribe to the channel, Pansy Podcast, so you can see more of our stuff. Check out our other videos where we talk about some more substantial things, broader topics and themes, all things rock and metal and music and magic and fun and greatness and all that stuff. We like to have a lot of fun. So thanks for joining up for the ride. If you're not part of our Facebook group, Rock Talk with Doc Rocker, please feel free to request access to join that. We're pretty much, if you love music and you like talking about stuff, you already have a spot on our page. So check us out. We got tons of posts there, tons of videos, tons of content, tons more to come. So stay tuned.